Good morning. My name is Lorraine Jacobs, and Mark Miller and I are co-chairs of the Sunday Morning Forum. We thank you for being here and supporting the Sunday Morning Forum. For over 50 years at First Unitarian Society in Milwaukee, the Sunday Forum lecture series has showcased presenters. Forums are 1 hour in length and provide a presentation followed by questions. Scheduling and hosting these weekly programs is accomplished by volunteers. The presenters do not receive honoraria. The content of each forum may not always align with the viewpoint of First Unitarian Society in Milwaukee. They are meant to offer topics which can be pursued further independently. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that next Sunday, March 13th at 10:10 a.m., our topic will be Building Decarbonization 101. And that will be with Jacob Surfling. He's co-director of the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. So that will be next week. But today we have with us Sandra Weigand, and she will be introduced by her host, Dallas Drake. So good morning.
Well, good morning to you. Our guest today is a retired architect, an ardent traveler, a dedicated volunteer, and a true humanitarian, evidenced by her recent efforts on behalf of our over thousands of Afghan refugees who were housed at Camp Mccoy just as little as 3 months ago. I am honored and proud to introduce my lovely friend, Sandy Weigand.
Good morning. Oh, do I have a...
Good morning.
You're doing fine.
We can hear you.
Okay. Like both ladies have said, I'm Sandy Weigand. I'm a 70-year-old retired architect and a friend of Dallas, which I'm one of a million. I'm going to say a couple bad words. So if you don't like bad words, just right now, just hold your hands over your ears. But I'm really not the kind of person you would expect to join Team Rubicon, whose informal mottos of conduct are, don't be an asshole and get shit done. So I tried really hard to do both of those things, and I think I succeeded. Dallas had asked about my time sorting clothes for the refugees, but there's a lot of background that kind of goes with that. So since I haven't spoken to any group of people for years and years, I'm set it up as I'm going to ask my own question, and then I'm going to give my own answer, and we'll go that way. And then I know at the end there's questions that you can ask.
Everybody excuse me, everyone should Zoom.
I'm watching that people mute. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know how much you know about the situation, so I'll just give you some background before I tell you about sorting children's clothes. How did the Afghan refugees end up at Fort McCoy? They're really in the middle of nowhere. Fort McCoy is nowhere. The base there had a lot of World War II barracks that were supposed to be torn down, but when COVID started, they didn't tear them down. So they had a lot of room, and they had soldiers there to help. And also, they're less than a half hour from Volk Field, which is a military air training center. So they could fly in and be bused right over to to Fort McCoy without going through a regular airport. So that was huge. The barracks were obviously old and hadn't been used much. They tried to fix them up as well as they could, but they're basically summer barracks, so they're cold. They had to bring in a lot of electricity just to make this happen. And they did the best they could. And food for 13,000 in the middle of nowhere. It's just a major undertaking. Why did I want to help? I was a foreign exchange student when I graduated from high school. I got an EFS scholarship to Switzerland, a wonderful place to go. But I left with my 50-pound suitcase, wearing my winter coat in the middle of August, and went to a family. French was my language. I went to a German family, in a German school, in a German neighborhood. So I didn't speak the language and had to learn the language in order to just get by. And Switzerland has 4 official languages and many unofficial because their dialects are unintelligible to the main language. So it was hard for me. I had a wonderful family, but it was still hard. And being in AFS really gave me, a much broader world view. I take the Wall Street Journal to get a more conservative opinion, but also for the international news. There's a lot more about the refugee situation and the situation in Afghanistan than you'll ever know from TV news or other newspapers, or even watching the BBC on public television. It was, and still is, and is now more than ever, a very bad time. I felt the American withdrawal was, in the kindest term, bungled. And I just really wanted to do something to help the people who were hurt the most, who were the people at that time who got out. Now we know there are many people left behind. But, I couldn't help them, but I could do something here. Fort McCoy being so close, it's about a 3-hour drive on I-94, really not easy drive. I felt I could go there. And who was there to help the refugees? It's a really interesting situation. Obviously, the Army is there. Other military people are there. I met some Coast Guard men from Maine who were there. They pulled people from everywhere to come and serve. There's workers from many federal agencies. They took temporary reassignments. And the only reason I met them was they came to the Armory and sorted clothes on Sundays. So there were people from Homeland Security and TSA, and a lot of people that I have no clue, and other soldiers who were brought in because they were there for many months, away from their families and away from their homes. And they seemed to have Sunday off. And so the Homeland Security woman rallied them to come and sort. And then they'd go out for lunch. But at least, it was a day that was different. There was an article in the Milwaukee Journal, how can you help? So I read that, and it was Catholic Charities was one group, and Team Rubicon was the other group. The Red Cross did some things, but they were basically handing out kind of get established kits, some hygiene, but they normally hand out after some kind of disaster. So they didn't really have a need for people. And the money they collected all went in a national pot, so you couldn't direct it to the refugees who were here. The Catholic Charities were looking for professionals. They wanted professional people, mental health professionals, healthcare professionals, I think lawyers they were looking for, and teachers who spoke the language of the Afghan people who could teach English. They were totally overwhelmed. Their website, I think, exploded. They were basically either a Green Bay group or a lacrosse group, and I never heard back. So, and I sent emails and I tried to fill out their form, but it just didn't work. And I didn't have the qualifications they were looking for. So I went to the Team Rubicon website, and they were looking for people. So I'll give you a little history of Team Rubicon. It's basically an organization of retired military people. And it was founded by a man named Jake Woods and a few of his friends. Jake Woods grew up in Kansas, but he graduated from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. He joined the military and was in Afghanistan and Iraq. And when he came home, he was sort of at loose ends. And he got 7 of his friends together who were also at loose ends. And they went down to Haiti in 2010 after a big earthquake, and basically did whatever they could do. Some had medical training, some had they were strong. So they did a disaster relief effort on their own. They kind of got in before anybody because they were willing to go in through I think Costa Rica and cross the river, and that's how they gave themselves the name Team Rubicon. Once they crossed the river, there was no going back.
Oh.
So they served there, and then they came home, and one of those original 8 committed suicide. And that really spurred the ones who were left to look at the problems of veterans and adapting once they came home. So they did that, and it's really a desire to serve on the part of veterans who have all these skills. You know, they're medics, they're heavy equipment operators, they're logistics and supply, their food. They have skills in everything. And a lot who came home were just at loose ends. I don't know if you read the article in the Journal about the 4 Wisconsin National Guardsmen who committed suicide in over 5 months. I mean, it's gut-wrenching. They came home in the middle of a pandemic. They had no friends, no support. They were locked up with their parents after having been out in the world. There was no mental health support. There were no jobs. There was nothing for them to do. And they basically just sunk into despair. That's like the extreme example. But when I talk about schedule, you'll kind of have a better idea of how they came, what they were used to and how they came home. They have really 2 purposes. One is rapid deployment to disasters, because I have to read this so I don't screw up their mission. Medical and hands-on assistance. The second is the care and feeding of veterans. The way they've set up their programs is really to bring kind of a sense of purpose and normalcy, and to identify people who are in trouble. I have no knowledge of the military. I mean, I went to college in the late 60s, early 70s. I didn't know anyone who served except my dad. And that was a long time before. So I learned a lot, and I learned to appreciate much more. The rapid deployment, they basically send out an email to their members, and they say, we're looking for heavy equipment operators to scrape up mud in Washington state after they had those recent rains, or after a hurricane. They have tarping crews who'll come in, and all those blue tarps you see, they'll come in with all the supplies, with all the people, and set up in tarp roofs, or they rip out the wet drywall. Or one of their big things is chainsaw. They have chainsaw training all over. And they clear the roads, basically. They don't take it away. They don't do anything. They just cut it and lug it off the road so other people can get in. That's really always been their mission until the Afghan resettlement, where all of a sudden now, they're sorting baby clothes. So it's a whole different kind of operation. How did Team Rubicon end up in Sparta and Fort McCoy? No one else wanted it, basically. The federal government can't accept donations. They didn't really have the people to put it all together because there were 9 of these bases around the country. They asked the usual charities, and those people didn't want it. It was too big. It would like suck up all their efforts. So Team Rubicon was number 4 on the list, and they're headquartered in California. So they had talked among themselves and decided, yeah, we can do this. I mean, we have people in logistics. We have people who can put this together. And so they accepted, and they accepted all the bases. So Sparta had 13,000 people to begin. Some people, as they left, they were replaced. For quite a while, they did have 13,000. It was hard. People just didn't get out. They were there much longer than anybody expected. They never expected to go into the winter. So it was just really hard. There was sort of nothing for the people to do. So they were very bored. There were sad articles in the journal, about what to do. They were living in small rooms with whole families. A barracks room is very small with everything they had. So it was tough. And Team Rubicon stepped into that situation. How did I come to Team Rubicon? I was looking for something to do. I wasn't sure about Team Rubicon. Didn't seem like my kind of group, but if that was the way to go, I thought I'd check it out. So I bought some long sleeve crew neck women's shirts and women's and girls underwear and put them in my car and drove over to Sparta to check it out. All the sorting was done at a warehouse about 20 minutes from Fort McCoy. So I rang the doorbell at the armory and demanded that this nice man who wanted to send me away walk me around and, show me what they were doing. It was just chaos. I mean, a Sparta armory warehouse is huge, and it was just mountains of bags of clothes and boxes and just these women just sitting there under this mountain of bags, starting the process. I asked, they included billeting, room and board. So I asked if they had a shower, and he said yes. So I was in, as long as I had a shower, it was okay. A church about a half hour away in New Lisbon set up the room, and the ladies of the church cooked. It's not your average church. It was the archery range. So it was a long, narrow metal building, and they had moved from their big church in town out and brought some of their things with them. So there was some stained glass, and there was a communion rail, and there was a pew. But basically, it was a big room with individual tables, small tables. It was in the middle of COVID, and that area of the state had a low vaccination rate, and they were really in trouble. So we had to wear masks all the time. We ate at a table by each person by themselves, unless they were married. And we called it detention. We would yell across to each other to talk. But the church ladies were fabulous cooks and even better bakers. So we had great food, and we packed our own lunch then to take with us in the morning. So I came home once I knew there was a shower, And I went on the website and signed up for Team Rubicon, and I was accepted. And after you take TR 101, which is like a history and culture online class, you can be deployed. So you're allowed to go to the calendar and pick your days. So I signed up and took 7 days. By the time you drive to Sparta, and I had nothing to do here, I thought I might as well stay. So I was approved to deploy. You can't go anywhere if you're not approved. I think they have a big issue with people just showing up, and they have an even bigger issue with the insurance that it takes to keep this together. They don't want people to be hurt. So I went to, on my day, I got up really early and drove to Sparta. They generally start at 9 at the armory. So when I got there, I'm going to move away and show you my shirt. Oops. It comes up backwards, but there you have it. Because it's basically run like the military. Everybody gets a uniform. I walked through the door, I signed my waiver, and they handed me 3 shirts. Every shirt has a bar on it, so you can write your name, which is fabulous for me because I don't remember names. And people come and go. Some people were there a lot. Some people came for a weekend. Some people came for a day. So I got my shirt. They assigned me to Lisa, who had been in the military at some point. When she got out, she went into education and ended up being principal of schools in Racine and Kenosha. And when she retired, she moved up way up north. And so she was a tough woman. And she was sorting baby clothes, but she really had more important things to do. So she trained me in infants, toddler tops, toddler bottoms, boy tops, boy bottoms, girl tops, girl bottoms, winter jackets, underwear, and socks. And I basically did that the whole time I was there because I'm not a lifter. And anytime I went near the truck, you carry a little bag and then all of a sudden you're hoisting this big box, and I couldn't do that. So she taught me, I taught others. And then besides children, they were sorting by men, women, hygiene products, and blankets, basically, were the items that came in. Team Rubicon and the government wanted new things, but that just wasn't happening. Most of the things were used. Some were very badly used. Big dumpsters of things went away. A lot of things went to Goodwill because they were just inappropriate. Afghans are small people. People in Wisconsin are big people. A lot of extra larges just couldn't be used. Every week, 12 boxes that were like 4 by 4 by 5 were sent to Goodwill. So that was just a lot that wasn't used, but tons was used. It came in through a big door. Semis would pull up, or box trucks, and unload. Then they would call everybody who was on that team, and they would all show up and unload. They kept a pickup truck parked in front of the armory, and people would come all day long and drop off bags of clothes and toys and games. Or church groups would come. Monday was always a big day because church groups would come. I'd collect it on Sunday, and then they would bring it Monday morning. So the items came in. When there were soldiers, they sort of pre-sorted. So they tried to pull out the extra large. When there were enough, they would sort them into like 48 by 40 by 3 feet high boxes of maybe all boys' clothes mixed up, or all toddler clothes all mixed up. And then those would move through the warehouse to the places where you sorted. So I basically stood on concrete and bent over a table, like a cafeteria table, and sorted clothes for 8 hours a day. And standing on concrete when you've been used to, like going for a walk for an hour or sitting on your couch, the first day was really hard. And the first day I had to learn I was not a lifter. So if I needed something big lifted, I called somebody from Team Rubicon or a soldier. They were very polite and very helpful. So sometimes I'd help. I had a great guy named Stan who joined Team Rubicon. He was in his probably late 60s. His lifelong girlfriend had been in the military, but she had just died recently. And so he signed up with Team Rubicon sort of as a grieving tool, to be around people and help people. And she had wanted to join, but then she found she had cancer and she couldn't join. So I worked with him a lot. He kept me going. Sometimes I'd get too detail oriented. It's like, no, just do it. So once they were sorted, they were put in bins, and then the items were put in bags and labeled and put into more big cardboard boxes. And then every day, big box truck went to the warehouse at Fort McCoy and delivered all the things. One of the days I drove to the Madison airport to pick up a guy from Montana. Team Rubicon, the leaders aren't allowed, well, nobody's allowed to work more than 2 weeks in a row. So the leaders had more than timed out getting this whole thing set up. So they both timed out at the same time. There were 2 leaders. And so they brought in Eric from Montana, who is a wildfire firefighter, who had been in the Army. And then he had dated a special agent in the FBI when he came back and guarded a room where they were building some super technical, super secret, something for a satellite. And I think they broke up after that. And then he signed up with the Forest Service and went to Montana, where he had no roots, and jumped out of helicopters with some tools way back in the forest, and put out, small fires before they were big fires. Basically, they were spring, summer, and fall, so he was free in November. And I mean, this is the kind of people who sign up for this. He said, if I live carefully, I don't have to work in the winter, and I can do this all winter. So he can go wherever, they need help with his skills. He sort of baby clothes with me for a couple hours while he learned everybody's tools, everybody's sorting. He learned women's clothes and men's clothes. And then the leaders went away. And at that point, there were no volunteers who would carry over except for me. So I signed up for 2 more days. So I was up there 9 days the first time. And that was a long time. That was, by the end, I was ready. At the church, we slept in cubicles, basically office cubicles. They set up behind the church wall. So you had a real mattress, a real bed, and a little space to get dressed. But they were only 6 feet high, and people snore. And some people snore outrageously. And so I would try to go to sleep, and I had custom-made earplugs, but it wasn't enough. So I hadn't been sleeping a whole lot. So by the time I was ready to drive home on the 9th day, I was so tired. I had to get off at a wayside and slap my face and buy a Coke. I mean, I couldn't stay awake. So I came home for a week, but the leaves never fell off the trees. So I thought, well, I can go back. I don't have to be here. So while I was home, I sent an email request to a few small friends because I needed small clothes. my small friends passed them on to many people who responded. I asked my chiropractor, who was a small man, and he put it on his link with everybody he knew and people from his kids' school. So I came home. I collected a huge amount of clothes. I tried to sort them in my dining room, but at some point it was like, this isn't going to work. So I just have a little Audi. So I packed up my little Audi and I took what I could and worried about the rest. It was in the garage. Dallas suggested I call the Islamic Center. So I did when I came home the next time. And they sent a big cargo van and it was completely filled, about 2 layers, 2 bags high. So there was a lot. And then the Islamic Center was sending trucks to Fort McCoy. So then it was delivered that way. When I went back for 7 days, I saw the store where the things, I got it on the post one day. You have to pass a government background check, and they don't want people going there. You know, you weren't tourists, and they were very worried about COVID, and they had a measles outbreak. They didn't want people coming in with bugs. So I did go one day. The store was empty because they were vaccinating 13,000 people with the that measles, mumps, rubella vaccines. So all the people were confined to their barracks and then called and then got their shot. It was a pretty depressing place, big metal building, kind of dark, huge bins of clothes. I signed up to go back 4 more days because the leaves still didn't fall off the trees. When I came home the second time, I really had trouble leaving. And this is kind of the military thing. You have a mission. You have people you do it with. You've made friends, good friends. The mission isn't done. You may not see the friends again. I was driving back and there's a big wayside not that far from Sparta. And I just had to go in there and cry. I just sat in the car and cried. And and I'm slapping myself thinking, no, this is silly. But I really felt like I was losing something. So I pulled it together and I stopped and visited a relative who lived in Lodi. So, and then I came home. When I went back again, so I signed up for 4 more days. Then I put out a request, this time for very small things. They really needed Tide Pods. The women had been washing the clothes in tubs outside because that's what they were used to. And the government bought wash machines, but they didn't buy soap. So I collected, I think, I can't find the slip, but the number that sticks in my head is 643 Tide Pods. Team Rubicon is really into counting. They count everything. They count hours of volunteers. They count toddler tops and toddler bottoms. Every day we put in a sheet that said, how many we had. They were never, when they were put in the bag, they were counted. So I counted my Tide Pods before I left so I could tell my friends how many. I needed small things that would fit in the car this time. I had Tide Pods diaper rash ointment because there were a lot of children, fingernail files, and toddler boots. So I took all of those things back. And for the 4-day one, I was one of the few people who didn't ask to go to Fort McCoy. So they sent me to Fort McCoy because people who asked, they knew they wanted to look around, they wanted to meet people, and that was not in the program. So I went to the warehouse at Fort McCoy. By the end, Team Rubicon was finishing up their commitment. They had a contract. So we were consolidating the warehouse and trying to pick out some of the best things to get into the store for people. There was just so many large clothes, and they needed so many small clothes and medium clothes. The other problem was everybody brought women's things and girls' things. there were almost no men's clothes, and there were boys' clothes, but not nearly as many as girls. And I think it's women do the shopping, and you feel bad for the women of Afghanistan. Their life has been very closed, very sort of subservient, not able to be free. And women just went out and brought clothes like crazy. So we were sorting through like women's clothes, trying to find sweatpants that we could put in the men's bin because there were just not enough. By the time I left, everybody had been through the store 3 times. It was hard because our sizes don't mean much to them if you can't read and you don't know your size. So women had children with them, so they had a limited amount of time. They had to hold up the clothes and get the right clothes, and the kids would grab clothes. And I think there would be a lot of trading going on back in the barracks to get the right clothes. Plus the women had so many clothes on, and then the heavy garment over the top, that it was hard to even tell what size they were. Plus there were men in that store, and women and men. That's not a good combination for them. The men had their own store, Afghan men, and the older boys went with them. That was very orderly. Everything was laid out. The few clothes that were there, it was easier for them to find and take away. There were so many infant clothes that then there weren't that many infants. They were just giving away bags of, here, take these infant clothes. There were a lot of pregnant women there. And right now in Milwaukee, there've been a number of births. So our schedule was lights on at 6:30 in the morning, breakfast by the church ladies at 7, meeting at 7:30, see who's there, what there was to do today. Van left at 7:45, you better be there. None of us drove, we were always taken care of. If you knew what you were doing, you could start after you got there, so about 8:15, 8:30. There was a meeting of the of the officers, basically, the people who would tell you what to do and make sure things got done. At 9 o'clock, we had a meeting, everybody started. You could take lunch whenever you want. At 4:45, we cleaned up. We had to be out of the armory before 5. They set the security alarm. We drove back. We got there about 5:30. We had dinner at 6 and then helped clean up. If the weather was good, this is October and November, we had a big campfire. And that's part of the Team Rubicon thing, that you gather and talk. And I had some really interesting conversations with people who, were like, didn't know how they were going to adjust to just different things. They'd been in the military, but one man's son was going away to college, and they had spent a lot of time together in sports. And he was looking for something to fill that void. And he thought Team Rubicon, maybe that would be it. That, there would be time and people, time that he could fill and people. Then he went back to his really important computer job the next day. So they also have a tradition of, when all the work is done, there's 2 beers for every member. They keep the cooler locked up in a vehicle, so no one can get their beer early. I said I didn't really drink beer, so for me they bought 2 little bottles of Sutter Home, the little wine bottles, and tucked those in the corner of the cooler. So usually I was so tired, 1 was plenty, but I would, if there wasn't a campfire, I would sit on the church pew with one of those microwave heating pads on my back and drink my little bottle of wine and listen to people talk or read a magazine I had brought along. But usually most people are so tired, they're in bed long before lights out at 10. But sometimes the campfires were so interesting that we stayed. And the church had everything to make s'mores. And so it was fun. I made some really good friends there. So when when I went back, I did see the store in action. So I saw the ladies and the kids and the chaos. By the last time I left, everybody had a winter jacket. Everybody who was at Fort McCoy had a winter jacket. They were about 200 short. Land's End had sent over a whole semi of winter jackets. I believe it was Tammy Baldwin contacted someone she knew, and they took the sizes of all the people who were left, and that person donated a jacket for every person who didn't have one. So that was taken care of. There was a separate warehouse for blankets and jackets, so that was really well regulated to make sure everybody got what they needed. Clothes, there was a lot, and it was a free-for-all. Blankets and jackets were assigned to people. Just looking, because I wrote notes because I don't want to miss something. So when Team Rubicon's time was ending, the time I was there for the 4 days at the end, another group was taking over, and they were called Save Our Allies. They were kind of formed right now to get people out of Afghanistan. But they were rougher and not very respectful and kind of way over their head. And they were kind of trying to make it about them and their mission, as opposed to Team Rubicon, who was just kind of invisible. You know, here are the things, good luck. And they did something that I'm not even going to say. And they angered Homeland Security. So when Team Rubicon pulled out, the numbers of refugees were going down. And when Save Our Allies took over, after a while, Homeland Security kicked them out and said, no, you can't be here. So then the Army basically took over distribution, and people, got out. Some left on their own. They just couldn't take it anymore. Some of my friends went back, Team Rubicon friends. One went back and taught English for 9 weeks. She had been an English as second language teacher. She did not speak any of the languages, but I thought that was incredible. She said some just left, and you don't get the government benefits if you leave. And hopefully you have, a friend or relative on the outside who comes to get you and, shelters you and gets you started. But it was very sad that, it was coming to that. One of the other women went back, and she worked with a group that collects information from people and writes resumes. And then they're posted on a national website so that employers can look for refugees who have skills that they need. So she did that for quite a while, but COVID started to get loose, and so then they weren't allowing any more volunteers. Catholic Social Services stayed, I believe, till the end, and the Red Cross was there for a while, but they pulled out pretty early. So it was basically the Army and Homeland Security. A lot of the government people were there until the week before Thanksgiving, and then a new group came in because they had been there since August, and they had real jobs. They asked to be reassigned, and they were paid their regular salary, but they were doing this job. So right now, Team Rubicon got back into the warehouse business again. They set up 8 warehouses around the country. There's one here in Milwaukee. As the bases around the country closed, they had a lot of things left. So they packed them up and put them in semis, and they delivered them to these different warehouses. Companies, Team Rubicon recruited companies like the Land's End donation. So they sent semis of things. Kimberly Clark last week sent a whole bunch of diapers, paper diapers. So this warehouse is still receiving things. They had a lot of used clothes, that have been circling the country in semis. So they've been sorting those and trying to figure out how to get rid of them because there's just no way to use them all. Now they're receiving furniture, toys. They have an Amazon on the Team Rubicon website. They have help our Afghan guests. There's a big square with a picture. One of the many missions that are going on right now. And if you click on that, it'll take you to a list of the warehouses, and the Wisconsin, Milwaukee warehouses in the lower right-hand corner. They're looking for specific donations. So there's a volunteer tab, but there's also a wish list tab. Some people don't like to buy things from Amazon, but this list goes through Amazon. And when I asked last week, the things they're really looking for are paper diapers, size 0 or 1, because they're having a number of births, and anything for the kitchen. They have like dishes or glasses or cooking utensils. And those things are shipped directly to Milwaukee. They don't go somewhere. They actually go to an Airbnb where the leader is staying, because this warehouse is in a pretty tough neighborhood, and UPS doesn't really come there very often, or the things are left outside and they disappear because there's no way to contact the people inside. So I've been there 5 times now. It's back to the same old sorting. And now more of the things are leaving the warehouse. For a while, it just seemed like everything was coming in and nothing was going out. But now groups like Lutheran Social Services or the Islamic group or International Institute are coming to pick things up, or things that are being shipped out. This is a warehouse for a region. So, it goes to Madison, it goes to Green Bay. I think some even goes to Michigan. So that's their current Michigan. There's no drop off. They don't want drop off, so they don't say where the warehouse is. If you didn't want to do the Amazon thing, but you wanted to do something, Dallas has my number, or Lorraine has my number. You can tell me. I can contact them. If it's like furniture, they have a truck. They can come pick it up. If it's, if you had a drive at church, I'm sure they would be happy to come and get it from you. And the volunteers, you can sign up there, and they take non-Team Rubicon volunteers because you're living in your own home. So there's no billeting and there's no travel, and they could really use volunteers. And that's on there as well. So if you signed up, they would contact you. There's still thousands of Afghans parked out in the world. Some are in Afghanistan who just didn't get out, but the United States moved people all over. There's people in United Arab Emirates, there's people in Africa who are waiting to come to the United States, waiting to be processed. They may never make it. It's a terrible situation that's not really publicized. When I signed up with Lutheran Social Services to be a mentor, they say they've settled about 200 people in the Milwaukee area. Families are big. Some families, are 10 people, 7 people. So it's a big job and churches, and I know Fox Point Lutheran and Kingo together have settled 2 families. But you can also offer help to practice English. That was my hope. So it's been a couple months since I put my application in, and my background check. I've been background checked 3 times now, so I figure I'm good. And they're hoping to set up a meeting next week where I would meet someone that I could work with. Team Rubicon's already looking at Ukraine. When you look at their website, they have medical people in Poland. in contact with World Health Organization, to find their place. They don't just like charge in their big team players. And Lutheran Social Services, the woman, I said, yeah, oh, you must be so overwhelmed. And she said, well, we had people we were working with already from Sudan and African countries. The Rohingya from Myanmar are still coming and being served. And they could get people from Ukraine. There's so few people in that field because during the Trump years, the refugees were cut off. There weren't many. Catholic charities in Milwaukee closed because they were told there were too many service groups here. So to fire all that back up again has been a huge undertaking to get the actual office workers, the contacts for apartments, and donations. So it's an ongoing thing. I'm done. It's a
Well, thank you, Sandy, so much for all of your explanation and beautiful description of just what you have been doing. I had one tiny picture of you just sorting things, and it was such a life-changing experience for you.
It really was one of the best things I've done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. Yeah,
Andy,
very nice. There are some people, sorry, don't mean to, let's see. We could just chat in a way because there are not that many of us, but Deb, you did write something. Did you want to add to that? Yes.
I worked with Team Rubicon sending the teddy bears. And then the Allied, and then it was some guys from the National Guard,
right?
And a Lieutenant J.G. Hainan called me right at that end, and he said all of the bears had been accounted for.
Oh, good. That's good.
And had been distributed to families and children. But now I work with the Hainan refugee group here in Milwaukee, and it's a real small group of women. It's a nonprofit. It's been set up, and they're working with about 50 families, and they let me babysit some of the little ones while they had ESL classes on Friday. And it's just right. There were 5 little girls. Of course, I speak nothing that they understand, but they looked at me so curiously, and they were so beautiful. And there is a list. If you go to, they have a Facebook page. You can go to the Facebook page, and there's a list. You can go to Target and buy things that they need. And there's a list of specific things they need: pots and pans and dishes and spoons and pressure cookers and all kinds of things. Not so much clothes.
Yeah, no clothes.
Yeah, they're setting up their apartments. So if you know of anybody who's renting anything, contact that group. They're trying to get the women to learn English, and sometimes it's hard to describe them. But the gal that I worked with caring for the babies ran an agency in Afghanistan for women and to teach them health and hygiene and control, and to get an education, and to read and write, and to move forward and stay in school, and all those things that is so tough to fight against in that particular culture. And so she was targeted for about 10 years by the Taliban. They were looking for her.
Thank you, Deb. Yeah,
I just wanted to let you know. Yeah, there is a place to volunteer. Go there.
Okay. Thank you. I do want to check with church and see if there are any questions there with people who have stopped in after the service and are in person. Mark, is there a question that we should, or a comment? Nothing. Okay. I did want to say to. Oh, okay.
You have to come.
Okay. It seems to me that some of these contacts, if you want to volunteer or send things, that would be really nice if it were posted in our Chanticleer or on our church website. Our church does not good at reaching out like that, and I think that would be a really good way to do it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sherry. I was just going to mention that I entered Sandy's email address because she said
Uh-oh.
to put it in there. You said phone number, and I didn't put that
No.
in. But
Oh, that
I
was
did
just
put-
for you.
Oh, I did put, yes, I did put your email in there because I thought too, if there was a way we could collect information like Deb's information, I couldn't type fast enough to know what to write in there. So if they could get to you or to me, I'll put my email in there too. And then I do too also think we need a list. Something that we can refer people to through church. So I'd like to work on that. So I'll put my email in there now. And Nancy, who had something to say earlier, has her hand up.
Hi, Sandy. I just wasn't clear. Is anyone left now at Fort McCoy, or have they all been?
No, they're all gone.
Okay.
Everybody's out. That
Wow.
was one of the last bases. And the last one in New Jersey just closed last week.
Oh. So now
But there are all these other people that who knows, what, if they'll be bringing them in or how that will go.
Okay. Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And the one thing is, if you're thinking of donating, no clothes. They're overwhelmed with clothes.
Okay, I put a note in there in the chat that said this is for contact information to start a list of what we can tell people to do now, maybe in Milwaukee or other places. And I put my email in there. So any other comments or questions or?
The Team Rubicon warehouse has a lease through the end of March, and I don't know if they'll be extending it. This is a building that people are not dying to get into. So it's available as long as they have the mission.
We contact them directly through their website, Team Rubicon.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I'll look up their website. Okay.
I have to say it was one of the best things I ever did. The people that I met, you don't bond with them all, but Eric the firefighter and Kathy from the UP drove down her 6 hours. She was there every time I was there. She had been in the Navy long ago. She's an engineer. And Deb, who was helicopter crew and in Afghanistan and Iraq, and her body was just broken. She was never shot, but all those hard landings, and she was deaf from being a tail gunner. It's an amazing group of people, and they're still serving. And it keeps them going. I mean, for sure, for Deb, that was a lifeline to be able to do this work.
Yeah, it does seem that there would be, you met people there that you just never would strike up a friendship with.
Right.
But there you were,
Yep.
getting close to and sharing, and that's so beautiful. That's great.
And a lot of people joined just for sorting of clothes. It was 70% military before, but I think now it's probably somewhat less, just because so many people joined to do this work.
Okay.
So I don't know what I'll do in the future, but I can still sort clothes right now, I guess.
You're good at that. You got that.
I'm fast.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Just for people who are here, the forums are on Sunday morning at 10. And this is our first Sunday morning of meeting at 10 o'clock. We were always at 11 for the past 2-3 years. So we're getting back to a schedule, and that may be throwing people off. So we'll kind of help get this on their calendar. And Mark, you can wave your hand. He's sitting in Max Auto Hall at church so that we have some people attending services and they can stop in there in person and watch the forum on a live stream. screen, but this is our first brand new day of doing this fancy technology. And so we need people to get used to it, and they'll be wanting to come too. Any other comments or? Okay, well, we just appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, really.
You're welcome.
Really, Sandy. And I will contact you. We'll try to put a list together and get it out there in ways that our church can be more engaged to our members. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Thalis. Love you. Thank you for bringing your friend to us. Yes. Okay. All right.
All right, I'm gonna stop the